Thalia Vance was the kind of woman who remembered everything. She remembered the price of milk in 1974. She remembered the middle names of all her gardeners. She remembered the exact combination to the safe hidden behind the library wall. But lately, Thalia couldn't remember what she had for breakfast. It started slowly. A misplaced key, a forgotten name, a strange, heavy fog that settled over her brain like a thick blanket. Every morning, her daughter-in-law, Kerrigan, would walk into the sunroom of the Wisteria estate. She would be holding a porcelain cup on a silver tray. "Drink up, Thalia," Kerrigan would say, her smile a little too bright, a little too sharp. "It's my special herbal blend. It will help with your memory." Thalia would drink it. It tasted bitter. It tasted like metal and old leaves. And 20 minutes later, the world would start to swim. Thalia sat in her favorite armchair, looking out at the marsh that surrounded her home in Savannah. This house had been in her family for 4 generations. It was full of antiques, oil paintings, and secrets. But now it felt like a prison. Her son, Brogan, walked into the room. He was wearing a suit that was too expensive for a man who claimed his business was struggling. "Mom," Brogan said, kneeling beside her chair. He took her hand. His palms were sweaty. "Kerrigan and I have been talking. You're getting worse. You forgot to turn off the stove yesterday." Thalia frowned. Did she? She didn't remember cooking. "We found a place," Brogan continued. "A wellness retreat in Sedona, Arizona. The desert air is good for the mind. They have specialists. Just for 3 months, Mom. Just to get you healthy again." Thalia looked at him. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say that she didn't want to leave her home. But the words felt heavy on her tongue. The tea was working. Her head felt like it was filled with cotton. "Okay," she whispered. "If you think it's best." Brogan smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a relieved smile. "Let me ask you a question. If your mother was feeling sick and vulnerable, would you send her away to a desert across the country? Or would you stay and take care of her? If you think sending an elderly parent away just to get them out of the house is unforgivable, hit the like button right now. Let's show Brogan that we are watching him." The night before the flight, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Talia was packing her suitcase. She carefully folded her silk scarves. She reached for her jewelry box, the one with the Vance diamonds. It was locked. She frowned. She tried the key. It didn't turn. "Oh, don't worry about those, Mom," Kerrigan's voice came from the doorway. She was leaning against the frame, holding a glass of wine. "I put them in the bank vault for safekeeping. You don't want to lose them in Arizona, do you?" Talia felt a prick of suspicion. "I wanted to take my pearl earrings," she said. "They're safe," Kerrigan said dismissively. "Focus on getting better." Downstairs in the library, the mood was tense. Brogan was sitting at Talia's mahogany desk. He had a stack of papers in front of him. "Just a few formalities, Mom," Brogan said as Talia entered. "Since you'll be off the grid, no phone, no stress, we need to be able to pay the utility bills and the gardeners." He pushed a document toward her. Limited power of attorney. Talia squinted at the text. The letters were swimming. "Limited?" she asked. "Strictly for maintenance," Brogan promised, "just to keep the lights on." Talia looked into the corner of the room. Her granddaughter, Juno, was sitting there. Juno was 19, studying art history. She usually had a bright, bubbly personality, but tonight she was staring at the floor. She looked pale. She looked terrified. "Juno?" Talia asked. "Is everything all right?" Juno looked up. Her eyes darted to her father, then back to Talia. She opened her mouth to speak. "She's fine," Brogan interrupted loudly. "She's just sad you're leaving, Mom. Sign here." Thalia looked at Juno one last time. Juno gave a tiny, almost invisible shake of her head. "Don't do it." But the fog in Thalia's brain was too thick. She trusted her son. She loved him. She picked up the pen. Scritch, scratch. She signed her name. Thalia Vance. As soon as the pen left the paper, Brogan snatched the document away. He didn't say thank you. He just slid it into a folder and closed it. "Go to bed, Mom," he said, his voice suddenly cold. "You have an early flight." As Thalia walked up the stairs, she looked back. She saw Kerrigan standing by the window. Kerrigan was holding a tape measure. She was measuring the silk curtains. "Just checking for dust," Kerrigan said when she saw Thalia watching. But Thalia knew you didn't use a tape measure to check for dust. A cold shiver went down her spine. But it was too late. The paper was signed. Have you ever signed something because you trusted family, only to realize later it was a mistake? That gut feeling, that intuition that screams stop, is usually right. Tell me in the comments, do you trust Brogan, or is he hiding something bigger than just a few bills? 3 weeks. That's how long Thalia had been in Sedona. The retreat was beautiful. Red rocks, silence, meditation. But the most important thing about the retreat wasn't what they had. It was what they didn't have. They didn't have Kerrigan's tea. For the first week, Thalia felt sick. She had headaches. She shook. Her body was detoxing. But by week 3, something miraculous happened. Thalia woke up at 6 a.m. She looked out the window, and for the first time in months, there was no fog. Her mind was sharp, crystal clear. She remembered the price of milk in 1974. She remembered the gardener's middle name. And she remembered the look on Juno's face the night she left. "I'm not sick," Thalia whispered to the empty room. She stood up. She felt strong. Her hands weren't shaking. "I wasn't sick," she realized, her anger building like a storm. "I was drugged." She marched to the reception desk of the retreat. "I need to use a phone," Thalia demanded. "Now." "Mrs. Vance, the program requires a digital detox," the receptionist said calmly. "Your son gave strict instructions. No outside contact for 90 days. "My son," Thalia said, leaning over the desk, "is about to be written out of my will. Give me the phone." The receptionist, sensing the danger in Thalia's eyes, handed over the landline. Thalia dialed the number for the Wisteria estate. Ring, ring, click. "We're sorry, the number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service." Disconnected? Thalia hung up. She dialed Brogan's cell phone. Straight to voicemail. She dialed Kerrigan. Voicemail. She dialed Juno. "Grandma?" Juno's voice answered on the first ring. She sounded like she was crying. "Juno, it's me. I'm okay. Why is the house phone disconnected?" "Grandma, you have to come home," Juno sobbed. "I tried to stop them. They made me sign." "Juno!" a man's voice shouted in the background. It was Brogan. "Give me that phone." Click. The line went dead. Thalia stared at the receiver. Her heart was pounding. They had cut the line. They were hurting Juno. She needed to see what was happening. She needed eyes inside the house. And then she remembered. 2 years ago, Thalia had installed a nanny cam in the library disguised as a boring leather-bound book. She used it to check on her cats when she traveled. Brogan didn't know about it. Kerrigan didn't know about it. Thalia pulled her iPad out of her suitcase. the one device she had hidden from the retreat staff. She opened the security app. Her fingers flew across the screen. Connecting, connecting. The screen flickered. A black and white image appeared. Thalia gasped. She dropped the iPad on the bed. Thalia picked up the tablet again, her hands trembling with rage. The camera view showed the library of the Wisteria estate, but it didn't look like her library. The shelves, hand-carved from mahogany in 1920, were empty. The books were gone. The Persian rug was gone. In the center of the room, there were drop cloths on the floor, ladders, paint buckets. They were painting the historic wood paneling white. "My home," Thalia whispered. "They are erasing me." But then she saw something even worse. Through the large bay window in the background of the video feed, she could see the front lawn. There was a sign stuck in the grass. It was massive, elegant gold lettering on a black background. "Coming soon. Exclusive private auction, developer opportunity, Saturday night gala." They weren't just paying bills. They were selling the Wisteria estate. Thalia checked the date on her iPad. Today was Thursday. The auction was Saturday. They thought she was confused. They thought she was trapped in the desert for another 2 months. They thought they had won. Thalia looked at the screen one last time. Brogan walked into the frame. He was holding a glass of champagne. He was laughing. He high-fived the contractor who was painting over the wood. Thalia turned off the iPad. She walked to the closet and pulled out her suitcase. She didn't fold her clothes this time. She threw them in. She went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. She looked in the mirror. The confused old woman was gone. The matriarch was back. She walked out to the front desk. "I need a taxi to the airport," Thalia said. "But Mrs. Vance," the receptionist stammered, "you've paid for 3 months. No refunds." "Keep the money," Thalia said, putting on her sunglasses even though it was inside. "I have an auction to attend." Thalia walked out into the desert heat. She pulled out her burner phone, a secret phone she kept for emergencies. She dialed a number that wasn't Brogan, wasn't Kerrigan, and wasn't Juno. "Orion," she said when the deep voice answered. "Thalia?" The lawyer sounded surprised. "You sound clear." "I am," she said. "I'm at the airport. I'll be in Savannah by 2 a.m. "Thalia, don't go to the house," Orion warned. "Brogan changed the locks. He has security. If you go there, he'll claim you've escaped from a mental facility. He has the paperwork to have you committed." Thalia smiled grimly. "Let him try," she said. "He changed the locks on the front door, Orion. But he forgot about the servants' entrance. And he definitely forgot about the loose brick in the garden wall." "Thalia, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to go home," Thalia said. "And I'm going to become a ghost." Thalia is flying back into a trap. Her family thinks she's thousands of miles away, but she is about to be living inside the walls, watching their every move. What will she hear when she's hiding in the attic? And what is the terrifying document they forced Juno to sign? The rain in Savannah didn't just fall, it felt like it was trying to wash the city away. At 2 a.m., the streets were empty, slick with oil and water, reflecting the streetlights like shattered mirrors. A yellow taxi slowed to a halt at the edge of the marsh, a quarter-mile away from the main gates of the Wisteria estate. Thalia Vance stepped out into the downpour. She didn't have an umbrella. She didn't care. The water soaking into her coat felt real. It felt grounding. For 3 weeks in the desert, she had felt like a ghost, floating in a medicated fog. Now, the cold rain told her she was alive, and she was dangerous. She told the driver to keep the change and waited until the taillights disappeared around the bend. She couldn't risk the headlights sweeping across the front of the house. If Brogan or Kerrigan saw a car at this hour, they might call the police. and Thalia wasn't ready for the police. Not yet. She walked along the perimeter wall, her boots sinking into the wet mud. She knew every inch of this land. She knew where the ground was soft and where the tree roots would trip you in the dark. She reached the back garden, the section where her late husband had planted the roses 40 years ago. She stopped at the brick wall near the potting shed. To anyone else, it looked like a solid wall of aged masonry. But Thalia counted 3 rows up, 5 bricks over. She pushed on the corner of a moss-covered brick. It wiggled. With shaking hands, she worked it loose. Behind it, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small brass key. Her husband had hidden it there during the Cold War, a silly paranoia that had become a family joke. "If we ever get locked out," he used to say, "at least we can get into the kitchen." Thalia kissed the cold metal. "Thank you, darling," she whispered into the rain. She crept toward the service entrance. The house loomed above her, dark and silent, like a sleeping beast. She slid the key into the lock. For a terrifying second, it stuck. Rust? Had Brogan changed this lock too? She applied a tiny amount of pressure, twisting gently. Click. The door swung open without a sound. Thalia Vance stepped into her own kitchen. But it wasn't her kitchen. She stood in the shadows, letting her eyes adjust. The smell hit her first. It didn't smell like cinnamon and old wood anymore. It smelled like fresh paint and chemical cleaner. She reached out and touched the counter. It was cold marble. Her warm butcher block island, the one where she had taught Juno how to bake cookies, was gone. She moved deeper into the house, her footsteps silent on the new, modern tile. The dining room was empty. The grand oak table, which had seated 5 generations of Vances for Thanksgiving dinners, had vanished. In its place were plastic drop cloths and stacks of boxes. Thalia felt a physical pain in her chest, sharp and hot. They weren't just selling the house. They were erasing her history. They were scrubbing the Wisteria estate clean of any memory that Thalia Vance had ever existed. She heard a noise above her. Footsteps. Heavy, confident footsteps pacing in the master bedroom. Her bedroom. Thalia froze. If they came down for a glass of water, it was over. She looked around for a place to hide, but the room was too empty. She had to go up, but not to the main floor. She slipped through the pantry door, which hid a narrow, spiraling staircase that led to the old servants' quarters in the attic. It was a part of the house nobody used anymore. It was dusty, cramped, and forgotten, just like they wanted her to be. She climbed the stairs, counting the steps in the dark. When she reached the top landing, she opened the door to the attic and slipped inside. It smelled of dry dust and cedar. She sat down on an old trunk, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was safe, for now. But the attic had a secret. The heating vents from the main bedrooms ran directly through the floorboards here. It was an accidental acoustic trick of the old architecture. If you sat in the right spot near the chimney, you could hear everything happening in the master suite below. Thalia crawled to the vent. A beam of light from the bedroom below cut through the darkness, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "It's done," a man's voice said. It was Brogan. He sounded happy, drunk. "The wire transfer cleared the offshore account an hour ago. The developer is serious." "I told you," a woman's voice replied. Kerrigan. "I told you she wouldn't notice. The old bat is probably staring at a cactus right now, drooling into her oatmeal." Thalia's hands clenched into fists. Her fingernails dug into her palms. "Are you sure about the demolition?" Brogan asked. There was a hesitation in his voice. "The Historical Society is going to throw a fit." "Let them," Kerrigan scoffed. "By Monday morning, the bulldozers will be finished. Once the house is gone, there's nothing to preserve. The land is worth 10 times more as a luxury condo resort. We take the 8 million, we move to Italy, and we never have to deal with Savannah or your mother again. Thalia pressed her hand over her mouth to stop herself from gasping. They weren't just selling it, they were destroying it. They were going to bulldoze the library where she learned to read. They were going to tear down the nursery where she raised Brogan. They were going to turn her legacy into a parking lot for tourists. Imagine working your entire life to build something beautiful, something to leave behind for your children, only to find out they plan to smash it to pieces the moment you turn your back. If you think there is a special place in hell for people who destroy family history for a quick buck, hit the subscribe button right now. We are going to make sure Kerrigan pays for every single brick she plans to break. What about Juno? Brogan asked. She's been crying all day. She says she won't sign the final affidavit. She'll sign, Kerrigan said, her voice turning icy. Bring her in here, now. Thalia heard the bedroom door open and close, then lighter footsteps. Mom? Dad? Juno's voice was small, trembling. Can I go to sleep now? Sit down, Juno, Brogan commanded. Thalia moved closer to the vent, pressing her ear against the cold metal grate. She needed to hear this. She needed to know if her granddaughter was part of the wolf pack or if she was just another sheep. I'm not signing it, Juno said, her voice shaking but stubborn. I read it, Dad. It says Grandma is permanently incapacitated. It says she's non-responsive. That's a lie. I talked to her on the phone. She sounded fine until you hung up on her. She is not fine, Kerrigan snapped. She is confused, Juno. The phone call was a moment of clarity, that's all. It happens right before the end. I don't believe you, Juno said. I'm not signing the witness form for the deed transfer. It feels wrong. There was a silence. A long, heavy silence. Okay, Brogan said softly. You don't have to sign it, sweetie. Thalia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Good girl, Juno. Stand your ground. But, Brogan continued, his voice dropping an octave, if you don't sign it, we can't afford the private facility in Arizona anymore. The insurance won't cover it without the asset liquidation. What does that mean? Juno asked. It means, Kerrigan interjected, that we will have to move your grandmother to the state facility, the one downtown. You know the one, right? Overcrowded, understaffed. It smells like bleach and urine. They tie the patients to the beds so they don't wander. No! Juno cried out. You can't do that. She hates that place. We don't want to, Brogan said, sounding perfectly reasonable, perfectly evil. But we have no choice. Unless we sell the house this weekend, the money runs out on Monday. If you sign the paper, Grandma stays in the beautiful resort with the mountains and the fresh air. If you don't, well, I hope you enjoy visiting her in the state ward. In the attic, Thalia squeezed her eyes shut. Tears leaked out, hot and fast. They were using her as a weapon against her granddaughter. They were holding her own safety hostage to force a 19-year-old girl to commit fraud. Give me the pen, Juno whispered, defeated. Thalia heard the scratch of the pen on paper. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. Juno had signed. Now, officially, Thalia Vance was legally a ghost. Good girl, Kerrigan said. Now, go get some sleep. You need to look pretty for the gala tomorrow. Smile for the investors. The door opened and closed. Juno was gone. Brogan and Kerrigan laughed. It was the sound of glass clinking together. To Italy, Brogan toasted. To being rich, Kerrigan corrected. Talia rolled away from the vent. She lay on her back on the dusty floorboards of the attic. The tears had stopped. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the burner phone. The battery was at 18%. She had one call to make. She dialed Orion. "Thalia?" he answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "I'm inside," she whispered. "I'm in the attic." "Did they see you?" "No, but I heard them. Orion, they coerced Juno. They forced her to sign." "That changes everything," Orion said, his voice grim. "If we can prove duress, the signature is void, but we need proof." "We'll get proof," Thalia said. "The gala is tomorrow night. I need you to do exactly what I say. Do not bring the police yet. If we arrest them now, they'll claim it was a misunderstanding. They'll claim they were trying to help me. I need them to finish the crime. I need them to take the money." "Thalia, that's risky. If the deed is recorded—" "The deed won't be recorded," Thalia cut him off, "because I have the red box." "You have the— Wait, you found it?" "I never lost it," Thalia said. "Bring the papers, Orion, and bring an electrician. I need you to cut the power to the ballroom at exactly 8:15 p.m. 8:15? Why?" "Because that's when the bidding ends," Thalia said, "and I want to make an entrance." She hung up the phone. The next 24 hours were a blur of stealth and silence. Thalia lived like a mouse in her own home. She ate an old protein bar she found in her purse. She drank water from the bathroom tap in the servants' quarters. She listened as the caterers arrived. She heard the clatter of silverware. She smelled the roasting beef and the expensive truffles. She heard the string quartet warming up. When night fell on Saturday, the house came alive. Car doors slammed. Voices echoed in the foyer. The elite of Savannah were flooding into her home to pick over the bones of her life. Thalia stood in the darkness of the attic. She had found an old garment bag hanging in the back of the cedar closet. Inside was a dress she hadn't worn in 20 years. It was a deep, blood-red silk gown. It was the dress she wore to the governor's ball the year she took over the company. It still fit. She zipped it up. She didn't have a mirror, but she didn't need one. She pulled her silver hair back into a tight chignon. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small velvet pouch she had retrieved from the hidden wall safe behind the loose brick in the chimney, the only safe Kerrigan hadn't found. She pulled out the Vance emeralds. Not the diamonds Kerrigan had stolen, those were insured. These were the emeralds, the ones that belonged to her great-grandmother. She fastened them around her neck. They felt heavy. They felt like armor. She walked to the attic door. She could hear the auctioneer's voice booming through the house. "We have an opening bid of $5 million. Do I hear 5.5? Thalia checked her watch. 8:14 p.m. She opened the door and stepped onto the service landing. She could see the back of the grand staircase. The ballroom was packed. Brogan was standing on the stage looking triumphant. Kerrigan was holding a glass of champagne, practically vibrating with greed. "Going once at $8 million, the auctioneer shouted. Thalia put her hand on the light switch panel that controlled the main chandelier, a secret override switch installed for cleaning maintenance. "Going twice!" Thalia took a deep breath. Her hand tightened on the switch. "Sold to—" Thalia flipped the switch. Zap! The massive crystal chandelier died. The sconces flickered and went out. The ballroom plunged into total, suffocating darkness. The music stopped. The crowd gasped, a collective sound of confusion and fear. In the silence, Thalia stepped out from the shadows and onto the top of the grand staircase. Below her, the emergency floodlights hummed to life,
casting long, eerie shadows across the room. The light hit her red dress. It hit the emeralds. She glowed like a vengeful spirit returning from the grave. Brogan looked up. His jaw dropped.
He looked like a man watching his own execution. Thalia gripped the banister. She didn't look frail. She didn't look confused. She looked like the queen of the Wisteria estate. "I believe," Thalia's voice rang out, echoing off the high ceilings, "that this auction is illegal." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Brogan took a step back, knocking over his microphone stand. It crashed to the floor, a jarring noise that made everyone jump. "Mother?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "You're supposed to be in Arizona." Thalia began to descend the stairs. Click, clack, click, clack. Every step was a judgment. "And you," she replied, her eyes locking onto his, "are supposed to be a dutiful son. It seems we are both full of surprises tonight." She reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She walked straight toward the stage where the deed to her house lay on the table, waiting to be signed. She reached out and placed her hand on the document. "Kerrigan," Thalia said without looking at her daughter-in-law, "you might want to put down that champagne. You're going to need both hands for the handcuffs." The doors to the ballroom burst open, but it wasn't the caterers. It was the police. Thalia smiled. The trap was sprung. But the biggest secret, the one about who really owned the house, was still resting in the red portfolio tucked under her arm. And when she opened it, Brogan wouldn't just lose the house. He would lose his freedom. The silence in the ballroom was heavy, thick enough to choke on. The only sound was the hum of the emergency lights and the frantic, shallow breathing of Brogan Vance. He looked at the police officers standing by the doors. Then he looked at his mother. Then he looked at the crowd of investors who were currently wondering if they could sue him for time wasted. Brogan decided to do the only thing he knew how to do. He lied. He forced a laugh. It sounded brittle, like dry leaves cracking. "Everyone, please," he stammered, holding up his hands. "There is no need for alarm. My mother, she is having an episode. She's confused. She escaped from her care facility in Arizona. The strain of her illness has made her paranoid." He turned to the police officers, putting on his best concerned son face. "Officers, I have medical power of attorney. This woman is mentally unstable. Please escort her out so we can get her the help she needs." Kerrigan jumped in, nodding frantically. "Yes, she's delusional. She thinks she's wearing emeralds, but those are probably glass. She doesn't know what she's saying." Thalia didn't scream. She didn't argue. She simply walked over to the auctioneer's podium, picked up the gavel, and slammed it down. Bang! The noise echoed like a gunshot. The room went dead silent again. "I assure you," Thalia said, her voice calm and terrifyingly sharp, "I am not confused. In fact, I have never been more lucid. But Brogan is right about one thing. He does have a power of attorney document." Brogan smirked. He thought he had won. He thought she was admitting defeat. "However," Thalia continued, "that document allows him to manage my assets. It allows him to sell my property." She paused. She looked at the deed lying on the table, the paper that was seconds away from signing over the Wisteria estate to a developer. "The problem, Brogan," Thalia said, "is that I don't own this house." Brogan blinked. "What? Of course you do. Dad left it to you." "He did," Thalia nodded. "And 5 years ago, after your second bankruptcy, I realized that if I kept this estate in my name, you would eventually try to take it. So I transferred the deed." She signaled to Orion, who stepped out of the shadows. The lawyer opened his briefcase and held up a certified document. "The Wisteria estate, Orion announced to the room, is held in an irrevocable blind trust. Thalia Vance is the trustee, but she is not the beneficiary. She is not the owner. Then who owns it? Kerrigan shrieked. Who owns the house? Thalia turned slowly. She looked into the corner of the room where Juno was standing, shrinking against the wall, trying to disappear. Juno? Thalia said softly. The crowd turned. Hundreds of eyes landed on the 19-year-old girl in the simple blue dress. Juno? Brogan whispered. My daughter? The deed was transferred on her 14th birthday, Thalia explained. It was my gift to her, to ensure she would always have a home, no matter what you two did to your own finances. Thalia walked closer to Brogan. She leaned in so close he could smell the rain on her coat. So you see the problem, don't you, son? You just stood on a stage and auctioned off a property that belongs to your daughter. You tried to pocket $8 million for a house you have zero legal right to sell. In the state of Georgia, that isn't just a mistake. That is grand larceny. It is fraud. And since you coerced her into signing a witness statement, it is also elder abuse and extortion. Brogan's face went gray. The champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. If you think a father stealing from his own daughter is the lowest thing a human being can do, hit that like button right now. We need to show the world that parents are supposed to protect their children's future, not sell it to the highest bidder. No, Brogan whispered. No, you can't do this. I'm your son. And she is your daughter, Thalia replied. But you didn't care about that when you threatened to throw me in a state ward to make her sign that paper. Kerrigan, realizing the ship was sinking, tried to grab a lifeboat. She pointed a shaking finger at Brogan. It was his idea, she yelled, her poise completely gone. He set up the accounts. He hired the doctors. I just wanted to redecorate. Redecorate? Thalia laughed. It was a cold sound. Is that what you call selling 4 generations of antique furniture to a liquidator for cash? Kerrigan straightened up. A look of defiance crossed her face. Well, at least we have that money, she spat. The antique dealer paid us $200,000 in cash yesterday. The furniture is gone. You can't get it back. So even if we go to jail, we'll have a nice legal defense fund. Thalia looked at Orion. Orion smiled. It was the smile of a shark that just smelled blood. Actually, Orion said, stepping forward, about that furniture. What? Kerrigan snapped. Thalia knew you were greedy, Orion said. And she knew that the moment she left for Arizona, you would start selling things. So, before she left, she had a team come in. They moved the real Queen Anne chairs, the Victorian buffet, and the grandfather clock into a climate-controlled storage unit. Kerrigan's eyes went wide. But the dealer took them. I watched him load the truck. He loaded high-quality replicas, Thalia interrupted. Stage props, made of particle board and veneer. They look very real from a distance, but they are worth about $50 each. You swapped them? Brogan gasped. I protected them, Thalia corrected. And unfortunately for you, the antique dealer figured it out about an hour ago when he tried to resell the dining table and the leg fell off. He is currently waiting outside with the police captain. He wants his $200,000 back. And since you already spent $50,000 on this party, I'm guessing you're a little short. The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the tall windows, painting the ballroom in chaotic colors. The developer who had won the auction stormed up to the stage. He was a large man and he looked furious. I want my deposit back, he barked at Brogan. Right now, or I'm suing you for everything you have. I don't have it, Brogan stammered. I sent it to the Cayman Islands. It takes 3 days to reverse. That sounds like a personal problem, Thalia said, stepping back. She signaled to the police officers. Officers, I believe these trespassers are ready to leave now. The police moved in. They didn't use handcuffs gently. They spun Brogan around, slamming him against the wall. They grabbed Kerrigan, who began to scream and kick, knocking over a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Get your hands off me!" Kerrigan shrieked. "Do you know who I am? I am a Vance. This is my house." "It's not your house, ma'am," the officer said, snapping the cuffs on her wrists. "And you have the right to remain silent." As they were dragged toward the door, Brogan looked back. He looked at his mother. He looked at his daughter. "Mom," he cried, tears streaming down his face. "Please, don't let them take me. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. I'll paint the walls back. Just tell them it was a mistake." Thalia stood tall. She touched the emeralds at her throat. "I taught you right from wrong, Brogan. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." They dragged him out the door. The guests, realizing the party was over and that they were potential witnesses to a major fraud case, began to scramble for the exits. Within 5 minutes, the ballroom was empty. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Juno was still standing by the wall, trembling. She looked terrified, as if she expected the police to come for her next. Thalia walked over to her. She didn't say a word. She just opened her arms. Juno collapsed into her grandmother, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. They said you were sick. They said they would hurt you." "Shh," Thalia whispered, stroking Juno's hair. "I know. You were brave, Juno. You refused to sign until they threatened me. That is bravery. You protected me the only way you knew how." "Is it really mine?" Juno asked, looking up with tear-filled eyes. "The house? It's always been yours," Thalia said. "I was just keeping it warm for you." "But what about Dad?" Juno asked, her voice small. Is he going to prison?" Thalia looked at the empty doorway where her son had been dragged out. "For a long time, sweetheart. Fraud, theft, elder abuse. He won't be coming back to the Wisteria estate." Juno buried her face in Thalia's shoulder. It was a heartbreaking sound, the sound of a child mourning the parents she wished she had, rather than the ones she actually got. Orion cleared his throat. He was standing by the broken chandelier switch. "Thalia," he said gently, "the police need a statement, and we need to call the electric company to turn the lights back on properly." "Give us a moment, Orion," Thalia said. She led Juno to the sofa, one of the few pieces of furniture Kerrigan hadn't managed to replace with modern junk. They sat there for a long time, watching the rain streak against the windows. Eventually, Juno fell asleep, exhausted by the trauma. Thalia covered her with her coat. She walked over to Orion, who was waiting in the foyer. "It's done," Thalia said. Her voice sounded tired now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the ache in her bones. "You saved the house," Orion said. "And you saved Juno. It was a good night's work, Thalia." Thalia walked to the window. She looked out at the dark driveway. The police cars were gone. The rain was stopping. "Was it?" she asked. "I sent my own son to prison, Orion. A mother never wins when she has to do that. She just survives." Orion nodded. He respected her too much to offer empty platitudes. He reached into his briefcase. "Speaking of surviving," Orion said, his tone shifting, "we need to discuss the other matter. The real reason you stayed in Arizona for those extra weeks after you figured out the tea was drugged?" Thalia stiffened. She looked back at Juno, making sure the girl was still asleep. "Did you find him?" Thalia asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't just find him, Orion said. I spoke to him. Thalia's hand flew to her mouth. And does he know? He knows everything, Orion said. He knows about the adoption. He knows about the separation at birth. And he knows that Brogan is his twin brother. Thalia reached into her pocket and pulled out a photograph she had carried with her from Sedona. It was a grainy picture taken from a distance. It showed a man walking out of a coffee shop in Phoenix. He was tall, he had dark hair, he had the same jawline as Brogan, the same nose, but his eyes were kind. They were Thalia's eyes. Brogan thinks he's an only child, Thalia whispered, staring at the photo. He thinks he was the only heir to the Vance legacy. That's why he was so arrogant. He thought he was untouchable because there was no one else. He was wrong, Orion said. When does he arrive? Thalia asked. Tuesday, Orion replied. He's coming to Savannah. He wants to meet you. And Thalia, he's a prosecutor. Thalia let out a short, shocked breath. A prosecutor. The irony was almost too much to handle. Her son Brogan was a criminal going to jail, and his secret twin brother was the man who put criminals away. Does he know what Brogan did? Thalia asked. He knows, Orion said. And he has some questions about the past. Questions about why you kept him a secret. Questions about why you chose Brogan and gave him away. Thalia looked at the photo. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I didn't choose Orion. I was forced. But I can't tell Juno that, not yet. It would break her. She's going to find out, Orion warned. When he walks through that door on Tuesday, everyone is going to see Brogan's face. You can't hide a twin. Thalia looked back at the empty ballroom. The house was safe. Juno was safe. But the family secrets were far from buried. In fact, the biggest one was just booking a flight to Georgia. Let him come, Thalia said, her voice regaining its steel. Brogan tried to destroy this family with greed. Maybe, just maybe, his brother can rebuild it with justice. She turned to the camera, her eyes locking with yours. But if he thinks I'm going to let him dig up the skeletons in the garden, Thalia whispered, he has another thing coming. I just defeated one son. I'm ready for the next. The screen fades to black, leaving only the sound of the rain and the unanswered question hanging in the dark. Who is the twin? Why was he given away? And is he coming to save the family or to finish what Brogan started? If you want to meet the secret brother and find out the truth about the adoption, you need to subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Part 2 is going to reveal a secret that has been buried for 40 years. Comment twin below if you think Thalia made the right choice sending Brogan to jail. See you in the next video.